I'll call the meeting of the Oregon School District Board of Education to order. It's Monday, January 8th, 2018. Happy New Year, everyone. We are at the Oregon School District Innovation Center at the high school. Ms. Wick, would you call the roll?
Ms. Feeney? Present. Ms. Oderico? Ms. Flanagan? Present. Mr. Raymond? Mr. Kraus?
No.
Mr. LeBrun?
Present.
Mr. Zopp?
Present. The board has a quorum, and I would note that Mr. Raymond notified me today he's under the weather. He caught his son's cold, and he did not want to contaminate us. So I told him that would be good. So I have proof that the meeting has been appropriately noticed under Wisconsin Open Meetings Law. I have the proof of that notice. I'll give it to Ms. Wick if anyone wants to examine that. We have the agenda before us as posted, which includes one action item and a number of information items, and then the board contemplates going into closed session for administrative evaluations. I need a motion to approve the agenda as posted. Mr. LeBrun with the motion, Mr. Kraus with the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. We have an agenda. Item A is the consent calendar. Is there any item on the consent calendar that any board member wishes to remove? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar. Ms. Flanagan with the motion. Is there a second? Ms. Feeney with a second. I would note we have a number of donations, and we've got a new format now that we're using, which is a spreadsheet, which makes it easier for me to remember. And a number of generous donations. The band boosters have a donation, almost $15,000 for marching band expenses, and then a number of administrators have donated money for an administrative scholarship, which is awesome. The Abbott Charitable Foundation has a $4,000 donation to Netherwood Knoll, and the Fans 5K Run, which is in memory of Allison Norland, has contributed $5,000 for her scholarship fund. That's terrific that continues. We have an anonymous donation for $100 to the Brooklyn Birthday Cart. Glenn Smeaton has donated musical instruments valuing $900, and the Karate Kickathon has contributed $710 to divide between our 3 elementary buildings to help families in need. So we greatly appreciate all those donations and the support our community gives to our school district above and beyond tax dollars. So seeing that, I don't think we have any contracts. Janie, is that correct in this? One resignation. Okay, call the roll then.
Ms. Flanagan? Yes. Ms. Feeney? Yes. Ms. Oderico? Yes. Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. Zopp?
Yes, consent calendar items are approved by unanimous vote. Agenda item B is communication from the public. Board Policy 180.04 allows the community an opportunity to address the board. Ms. Wick, has anybody contacted you? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to address the board? Don't see anyone. I know Troy Pankratz is here. Raise your hand, Troy. Hi, Troy. Troy filed his papers for the Brooklyn seat and Town of Oregon seat that is occupied by Mr. Raymond, and he's running unopposed, so we anticipate Troy would be joining us in April. So thanks. I've told Janie and Brian that you'll be getting board packets on a regular basis now, so welcome. We'll move to information items. C1 OEA report. Is there any member of the OEA present this evening who'd like to address us? Nope. Okay. Okay. No report from the OEA. I know that Brian and I have a leaders meeting on Thursday, so we'll be meeting with the OEA leadership at that time. Student report. Almost done, aren't you? You brought a visitor tonight to see how it goes. Can you introduce her?
Yeah, so behind there is Ellen Martin, so she'll be taking over next meeting as
How come you're in the back row? Way back there. Shy? Okay. All right. Old friends, right? Good. We anxious to see you when you coming on as a second semester representative, but we'll miss Carolyn. And Carolyn, you're going to come next week too, or next meeting for a little bit. Okay. We want to say nice things about you at that time too. You got semester exams coming up, right?
Yes, I have the next.
Okay. We bounced around as a board from time to time about how that works, having Christmas break, and any thoughts? And
Yeah, so I know as a student, I would love, and I know a lot of other students would like it as well, if we could have our finals before Christmas break. Leaving off for Christmas break, you aren't really thinking about studying our finals, if I'm going to be completely honest. So you might study here and there for like an hour or two, but your mind is elsewhere. So it'd be nice to have those finals done and over with before you leave for break so that you don't come back and get to class and be like, oh, wait, what are we talking about? So I know that there's some restrictions with the law as to when we can start, so that would maybe be a little bit difficult, but something to consider moving forward.
Yep, and you have worked with our committees on, we've been talking a little bit hours and school days and stuff, so I think that should be an ongoing discussion as we move forward, and student input on items like that, and the timing of exams would be really relevant, so
Yeah.
if you want to check into it, let us know.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, action items. D1 is Policy 139, Environmental Sustainability, and this was an item that was at the Vision Steering Committee, and so I think it's got to come from there, but Jeff is not here. Courtney, do you want to talk about this, or I can? Would it-
Because you have more background with it, Steve.
Okay.
It really was, first iteration was well before I was on the board.
Okay, we had an environmental task force that Barb and Dan were involved in and chaired and came up with a report and recommendations, and the Vision Steering Committee got a report from the task force, and the first step they determined was to do a value statement, much like we've done in our policy. In our path forward is to create some values, and so they were working on an environmental sustainability value statement, and Dan and Barb worked on that, and so I think we've got language that the Vision Steering Committee is comfortable with and forwarded it on for our recommendation and approval. It's not listed on the agenda as coming from the Visioning Steering Committee as such, so I think we would just need a motion from the floor tonight to approve that language, although I'd note that the Vision Steering Committee did approve that and refer it to the board, but we have agenda sort of thing, so I'd entertain a motion to approve the statement and then open it up for comments on it.
I move to approve the Board Policy 139 as submitted to us tonight in fact.
Okay, is there a second? Barb seconds, if that's appropriate, since you guys worked long and hard on this. Any discussion or comment? Courtney? Dan?
Yes, I'd like to thank everybody for their work on this, those who have touched this and those who have been patient with us as we work through the ways to properly do this. I think we've got a really nice statement. It's succinct, and it's a good way for the school board and the school district, I think, to move forward in acknowledging the great importance of sustainability, environmental sustainability, regarding the education of students as well as regarding the stewardship of the energy that we use as running the school district. That's it. Thanks.
Okay. Barb? Tim? Krista? Yeah, I'll echo Dan's comments, and I note that this is up on the screen, the language, but it reaffirms the district's commitment not only to educating our students regarding the necessity of environmental sustainability for the future of the world, but also to practice what we preach and in an operational sense, engage in sustainable practices. And I know with Andy's guidance, we've been a leader for a long time in that area and continue to do so. Proof of that is in the last month we've had 4 large banks of solar panels installed on this roof, which I think, Andy, doubles the size of our generation of solar. So, and even before then, we were one of the top 2 districts in the state for generation of solar power for its district. So this reaffirms our commitment to that. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Barb, for your hard work on getting this and as we move forward with engaging in practices that are committed to these values. So would you call the roll, Jane?
Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Feeney?
Yes.
Ms. Oderico?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Mr. Zock?
Yes. Policy is adopted on a 6-0 vote, and that will go in board policies. It's board policy 139, and that will be in the same area of policies where our visioning papers are included. So I think that's appropriate. That takes us to agenda item E, discussion items, policy. Krista, anything to report?
We meet at the end of the month.
Okay, and Vision Steering Committee, Jeff's not here, and we,
Vision Steering Committee meets January 31st, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the update of the
okay, which takes us to item F, Student Population and Growth Task Force Update. And is that you, Courtney?
It is.
And-
Leslie, come on up and add
and
anything
Leslie
that
as
you want to
well.
add. So, as you all may recall, the Growth Task Force made a presentation, a sort of an interim presentation to the Vision Steering Committee in December at one of our meetings. And our consultant, Mark Roffers, was there, as were Matt and Nathan from Bray, if I recall. And at that time, the Vision Steering Committee was updated on where in the progress the task force was, and we got some feedback as the task force from the committee. I'm on both, so it's trying to remember which position I'm talking about. The Vision Steering Committee gave feedback to the task force to finalize the report and perhaps come up with some pros and cons on the 4 options that were presented at the Vision Steering Committee meeting in December. So the task force met last Thursday on the 4th and met again with our consultants, and we were fine-tuning our final report, which will be made to the Vision Steering Committee at the January 31st meeting. I would encourage all board members to please try and be there, because there will be a lot of very important information that will be coming from the task force. One of the things, Steve, that I think you had asked the task force to do was come up with some pros and cons about each of the options, and we spent some time at our task force meeting on Thursday trying to do that, and we had some difficulty in that a lot of things that some people thought of perhaps as a pro, others thought of as a con. So some of those things are very subjective. It was really kind of hard for the group to really wrap their head around what was good and bad about some of the options in relation to others. So Mark and Leslie have been in communication to talk a little bit further about how to refine that process. Did you have a question?
oh, just a comment. I don't necessarily, when I was articulating that, don't really need sides on an issue, but factors that we should consider,
Right.
you know, for each of those, whether it's a pro or a con. But
Right.
what's relevant for discussion, noting that people might feel it's a pro or a con. but
Right.
something that we ought to discuss. And
Right.
consider.
One of the
So-
things we came back with at the task force meeting was perhaps 2 or 3 bullet points in kind of a positive and a challenge category for each option, so that will help with board discussion. I guess the question that I would have, and Leslie, we talked about this also at our task force meeting, is once the task force makes its presentation to the Vision Steering Committee, what would you like to see the process, how would you like to see the process end with the task force? In other words, the original charge to the task force was to make that presentation to the Vision Steering Committee. So what are your thoughts on wrapping up that process with that group?
My thought is that it's partly in the Vision Steering Committee's realm what to do with it, but at some point they're going to have to report out, or that committee will have to report out to the board and soon, and so that's probably going to be sometime in February. The thinking is that at that time, the community ought to have access to that as well. So it would make some sense at our first meeting in February to have the Vision Steering Committee and the task force report out on the breadth of what we've got, recognizing that all of us have probably heard it a number of times, but it's going to be critical to review the entirety of it, not only with ourselves as a board who's going to have to make a decision on it, but also to start bringing those topics before the public. And so doing that on air, I think, would be a good idea.
So we discussed that, and we thought that was probably what you were going to request. To that end, would it be beneficial to have the task force make a formal presentation with a PowerPoint so that the options and some of the visuals from the report are on screen for folks to see? Are we ready for that, do we think, in February?
I think so, but, I think that's something that can be discussed at length at the Vision Steering Committee and let them decide kind of how that community engagement would be best started.
We're open to whatever Vision Steering suggests.
Yeah.
I don't know if I need this one. We're open to whatever Vision Steering suggests, but Mark Rockford has said that he's also planning on preparing something for us based on what you tell us at the very first.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's going to be Vision Steering Committee moving that forward to the board and discussing how that format would look. But that would be my anticipation. Brian and I have talked about it in terms of what community engagement would look like then, and starting to feed to the public the information and the options that are available so that we can get feedback as a board.
Yeah, the report that Mark is preparing is just fabulous. It's really dense and very detailed. And so that's not something that you can probably just toss to people who haven't had a long time to process it.
Right.
And it would probably be beneficial to kind of cull it down to the main points, talking points for the presentation to the board.
Prepare a separate PowerPoint, so that would be
Yeah.
And that, I think, would be a relevant conversation at the Vision Steering Committee level as to, what should that presentation look like and what are the important points to bring
Okay.
there rather than have us decide that tonight here.
Okay. Okay.
So I think that the purpose of referring it to the Vision Steering Committee is to get that in place for the full presentation to the board. Any other board members have any thoughts on that? Dan? Okay.
Okay.
Good. Having been at not the last meeting, but the one before when Mark was there along with the Brave folks, you guys have done an amazing job with this and the amount of data that's been assembled and the critical thinking that's gone into developing options for the district for the next 25 to 30 years is amazing. So I'm excited to look at the final product, number one, but also to get this out to the public so that they can see how much work behind the scenes has gone into planning for the future. All right. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any other board member have anything to add to the conversation? Okay, let's go to then item F2 in the mental health update. And that is Candace and Leslie. So the floor is yours.
Waiting for our visuals to be pulled up on the screen. It'll be just a moment. Great, thank you. So we came here just a little bit ago with social workers from Building Bridges so we could talk about one of the major additions to our comprehensive mental health support plan in the district. So we knew that it had been really a relatively short amount of time between that presentation and tonight. So when we were thinking about what we wanted to share with you this evening, one thing really stood out. And clearly, we do what we do because of our emphasis on the whole child, and that we want to ensure that each child is healthy, safe, supported, and challenged. That's why we exist, really. But what we wanted to share with you today is something that's kind of exciting. And that is, when we first started the task force, there were so many, I would even say, sort of legislative barriers in the way to providing services at the school level. And we really worked with our local community people, Lake City Counseling and Oregon Mental Health, and they became advocates, and they were attending meetings, and things really started to turn. And when we first were looking at things, we were looking at districts outside of Dane County for best practice information. And then also looking a little bit at Madison, because they were about a year ahead of us on the journey. But now the exciting thing is that all of Dane County is really on the same page regarding providing mental health supports within the schools. So much so that if you look at the PowerPoint, you can see the idea that the Oregon School District and Dane County are coming together to take a look at community resources and how we can not just support the students within the school, but how we can take it to the next level and do supports that are outside of the school, and how we coordinate all of that. As a matter of fact, it's 16 districts and one vision. And I think that's really exciting, because there's power in the collaboration that comes from all of the districts together, united for something that serves all of our students throughout the area. So Candace will talk to you in a little more of an in-depth manner about all of the different things that are associated with this 16 districts, one collective vision idea.
So we have been part of the Children's Mental Health Collaborative for a few years, and this is really the work of the 16 Dane County schools, the United Way, Journey Mental Health, Public Health, Dane County Human Services. It's a whole collaborative of people that all have united to try to address mental health. And what we've tried to do is really emphasize the fact that we think that we're more influential as a group. We saw that with building bridges, and we are recipients of that this year. It started out pretty small, and everybody was really proactive in speaking about how valuable they thought that program was. So it has expanded to 12 school districts. So our group at the Children's Mental Health Collaborative is hoping that by working together, we can continue to advocate for mental health supports that are still absent from our communities. Some of the things that we're doing right now is we're trying to establish consistent language across all agencies, so that parents don't have something that they're getting from the schools is different than what they're getting from their mental health providers, from their physicians, and that kind of thing. So we're working together to use the language of social emotional learning, and each district in the county is also working to figure out what services they have, what is absent from them, what's working, what do we want to advocate for next, since we've gotten an increase in building bridges. So this is the social emotional learning standards, and right now it is the graphic on the left with the circle is the social emotional learning endorsed by CASEL, which is Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning. And we anticipate that DPI will be adopting the social emotional learning standards. And the chart on the right, which is super hard to see, is an alignment of the social emotional learning standards from CASEL and what we anticipate from DPI. So Leslie and I will be working with our groups to figure out how and where the social emotional learning standards will be addressed best. Okay. So since 2004, you have seen the RTI triangle, and we started with the RTI triangle in terms of IDEA reauthorization as a method of identifying students with specific learning disabilities. After we implemented the changes for RTI and started that structure, we began to implement PBIS in our schools, which is the other side of the triangle, addressing behavior and social emotional skills. In the meantime, the DPI identified that, of course, that isn't the whole picture, right? It's not just about special education. So the graphic on the right that you see in the circle is the current graphic, equitable multi-level systems of support that DPI has adopted, and the district has adopted that too. So you can see by the circle that there's a whole lot more involved than just providing interventions that lead to special education. It really is about collaborative practices, highly effective practices, using data, and then taking steps toward the next intervention and meeting the needs of all of our students. So when you look at this crazy graphic, you will see that it's not just about in school. It is also above the line, the triangles are for interventions that are available outside of school. So we are, in the collaborative, we're working to address what are those outside of system supports that are present or absent in our communities. So that's where we're at in our process. So this slide shows some of the things that we've been working on through the collaborative and through our district mental health committee as well. So you know that we've added building bridges this year. CBITS has been in practice for a long, long time, and we continue to bring you the agreement to continue that at the 6th grade level. We had hoped to be able to share with you that we were going to expand that to the high school to our OASIS group and our Achieve students this year, but we unfortunately were not granted the funding for that this year. So we'll continue to try to work at how we can get some CBITS at the high school level for some of our high-risk groups. Bounce Back is CBITS at the 3rd grade level, and we currently have student services staff at our elementary buildings going through training so that they can provide CBITS at the 3rd grade level. We're hoping that we can get that done in the spring term, but if that doesn't happen, then we'll try to connect and get started in the fall. The most recent training that we've had people attend is the dialectical behavior therapy, and this was training that was brought to Madison through MMSD, and they opened it up for the Dane County districts to send some people. So we've had 3 high school student services staff members attend the training, and this is a skills training program for students. It's intended actually to be a universal level, but right now we're going to try to do it at a tier 2 level, small group level, or individuals. And it works on teaching students about emotional problem solving, and it starts with mindfulness, distress tolerance, so that ability to tolerate some discomfort without going into flight or fight mode, emotional regulation, and interpersonal effectiveness. So it says it's therapy, but it's actually a skills training program that can be done by our staff. Then I think, the other thing that we're trying to figure out really are what are our gaps and barriers. And so we are in that process of identifying what common services are across school districts and across the county. And one of the biggest barriers that we know of right now is the lack of day treatment options for our students in the Madison area. So currently, there are a few day treatment options in Madison, but right now if our elementary students need day treatment, they're going to Janesville, and that creates some issues in terms of transportation for that distance and for students of that age. So we are thinking that we, across the districts, that we have a lack of treatment options in the Madison area, which is surprising for the size of the community that it is. So that's probably going to be something that we try to figure out, how can we address that in the future. And then we were super excited last year, and maybe the year before, when we finally thought that we had insurance coverage for all of our students that needed mental health services in the schools. And I'm sad to report that this year that's not the case. We have students who now are lacking insurance, so they're not able to access the school-based, the mental health providers therapy in schools because they don't have insurance coverage anymore. So that has come up again as a bit of a gap for us. Any questions?
Do you have any sense of why the drop in insurance coverage has occurred?
I don't really know. We
Okay.
just have,
Do you have any sense of whether those families are potentially eligible for Badger Care and they don't know it, or that they're not eligible?
I think they're not eligible.
Well, we're working with them as best we can to help them find out what resources are available to them.
Okay.
Cynthia D. Camelli is working with students. We refer them to Joe Sullivan. And we even, before the deadline for Obamacare sign up, our consultant who was working with employees was willing to consult with families who needed some assistance in navigating those waters. So we have set up layers of support for families. However, we're finding more students who have slipped through the insurance gap than we saw last year and the year before.
Joe Sullivan has also shared with us that he, if we have people who can't afford the deductibles, that he might be able to find some agencies that can contribute to that. So if that's the barrier, then we maybe would be able to help address it. But if they just don't have insurance coverage, then that's a barrier that we're still missing.
And they'd have to wait till next year to sign up for Obamacare, till the next open window.
Can they sign up?
the answer to that.
Yeah.
I don't know if Gina does. The next window to sign up if they didn't.
Yeah, they would, this works the same way as our insurance, so you can sign up an open enrollment or have a qualifying event, so it would just depend on their circumstances.
Any more questions, Barb? Anything else? Tim? Krista?
One of the things you mentioned, not moving CBITS to OHS, was the cost. What kind of cost are you talking in terms of adding that program at the high school?
Some of the cost is in training, so we need to have Journey Mental Health and the United Way have funded a lot of the training, and they also provide a therapist then that comes in and co-facilitates the groups. So we provide the in-kind by our people being participants, but they provide somebody from Face Kids that comes in and does the therapy with us.
Tim?
So where is the shortfall in covering the cost then? If we provide people on our side, United Way and others provide the training, what costs haven't been covered to make that happen?
The United Way covers the cost for 6th grade CBITS. Right now, they're not providing the cost for training
Okay.
and therapists for the high school program.
Okay,
So we had
that's-
tried to get an additional grant for that,
Okay,
and
thank
that
you.
fell through.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Courtney, anything? Dan?
Yeah, back to the insurance issue. Just in talking about that and in hearing you say that, I just had a question about, are we monitoring the insurance of all of our students or only students who are in this realm that need these services?
So we refer the students to, they have to meet with the either Oregon Mental Health or Lake City Counseling, and then they go through, the insurance coverage with them. And that, so then we find out if they're not covered because there's no payee.
So can I just
Yeah,
follow up
go
on
ahead.
that? So you go through that evaluation process and then you find out there isn't insurance coverage. Does that mean they are not going to get treatment from Journey or an equivalent?
So we have agreed to cover a few sessions so that they can try to figure out where another funding source can be from, but it's pretty limited.
Yeah.
Thanks. I just kind of coincidence. I had a conversation today with a private sector employer who has decided, actually, as a municipal sector employer, who decided that they were going to start making available on an EAP sort of basis once a year any potential mental health screening and conversations. Just because they recognize that behavioral issues in the workforce create productivity and relationship issues. And so it's meant to be wide open to their employees. If they want to use it, they're going to encourage them to go and just to talk, not suggesting that anybody has an issue. Everybody can go and just talk for 1 or 2 sessions per year. So it was interesting to have had that conversation this afternoon, and then listening to how we continue to approach mental health in our schools systemically, which was different than we did 20 years ago. It was kind of piecemeal and reactive as opposed to proactive, and it was pretty isolated between buildings, and certainly not with school districts, and certainly not countywide. So that's really encouraging, and one of the things that we'll need to do when we get to budget time is we've got gaps and barriers there, and part of the reason for getting this report is to identify priorities for us when we get to budgeting, so that we have a context within which to put all the different items on. And so I think a few board members have made notes of some of the gaps. So as we move forward, if we don't bring it up, remind us. Okay?
We will.
And I'm sure Brian and Andy have made notes of who's writing and what the issues are, okay? Thanks. That was a really terrific presentation, giving us a broad view of what's going on. So
Thanks. We were invited to the,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Would you like this presentation? Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have been invited to speak to the Dane County Superintendent, so we hope to be able to get on their agenda again once we get a little more work done and use them as a sounding board as well. So
Yeah, very good. Thank
The
you.
Mental Health Collaborative has been asked.
Good. Any other board member have any other comment or question before we move on to the next agenda item? Okay, that takes us to school board election update, and that's Brian.
Board members, our policy on board elections is policy 171, and this year there are 2 seats, as Steve mentioned one of the seats earlier. First, Area 1, which is the Village of Oregon. That happens to be Steve's seat that he has filled out papers for. And then Area 4, which is the Village of Brooklyn, the towns of Brooklyn and Oregon, Montrose, and Union. Sometimes, unless I look up the policy specifically, I don't get that correct in Area 4. And Troy Pancratz has registered for that seat. The election is on Tuesday, April 3rd, 2018, and our clerk will work on making sure that we have a canvass as soon as the election is complete, and I'm forgetting if that's after 5 days or within 5 days. I know we will get it correct either way. But we should be back reporting to the board because the elected board members would be seated at the second meeting of the month in April. That concludes my report unless anyone has a question.
No questions? Okay, that gets us to future agenda. And do we have anything, Janie, to look at? Okay, we do.
So do you want a short report from me?
Gee, that's right. Skipped right over you. Sorry about that, Brian.
That's okay.
Okay.
This is real
That's
quick.
Superintendent's report.
I'm going to take you back just 2 minutes. I wanted to underscore and highlight what Candace had shared. In November, all the pupil services director and Dane County superintendents met here in Madison to talk about this collaborative approach, and I think we're the first county in the state that has all the districts working on one vision with mental health, and that is a rather unique collaboration. Candace was one of the directors of pupil services that made the report to the superintendents, and I can tell you it was super well received, and we plan on getting together again this year to continue to advance that collaboration. Another super positive item, and I hope you've had the opportunity, or if you don't, you can click on OregonSchoolDistrict.net. We have a new website, and thanks to Krista, John, and Erica, I saw you before. There's Erica in the back. And you'll notice our new website was designed to be inviting, connecting with parents and the various users we have, and also a focus on branding throughout the district. So you'll notice a lot of orange, and that is Pantone color 20, help me, Krista, 21, thank you.
God forbid it be 22.
And black, I'm not sure what the black Pantone color is, but I know we have one. I hope you find it super inviting. You'll recall that we were on a real pressure schedule to get this completed by December 31st because our previous contract with Blackboard ran out, and there might be a few little tweaks that we need to make, but we are really pleased, and we've had some positive feedback already from parents and community members. And one of the most popular visits on the website, at least this was a couple of years ago, this will test how well I listened to John Tanner, is our lunch menus. Lunch menus are an often visited site. I think most of you know we resumed classes on Tuesday, January 22nd, and had some of the coldest weather for that first week in January that we've had in a couple of years. We didn't get close to that wind chill warning. Sometimes people get confused by wind chill advisory versus wind chill warning, and wind chill warning is in that minus 30 to 35 degree weather. So we were able to be in school all days. Then next Monday, January 15th, is our once a year teacher PD day that we share with the OEA, and Dr. Bergstrom worked with the OEA co-presidents to determine the offerings we have, and when Leslie shared them with me today, we have close to 31 offerings that are mostly developed by staff, for staff, and we might get a few more offerings between now and when that closes. And then second semester, you heard Carolyn talk about the close of first semester. Second semester starts on Monday, January 22nd this year for our schools that go by semesters, which basically the middle school and the high school. So that concludes my report, unless you have any questions, and I think everyone knows the plan next week with the school board, the WASB State Education Conference, and I'm guessing Steve's going to say a few words because we have a speaking engagement on Friday morning.
Any questions for Brian? Okay, now we can move to the agenda. You have at your place a draft agenda for January 22. It's a little light right now. Brian and I haven't had an opportunity to meet since the last meeting to go over that, but we will and talk about what we're going to do for, I think, probably the balance of the semester.
Yes.
In topics. Brian and I have got to do that. But we've got open enrollment spaces. We're required to do that, and transportation conditions of the payment. So if any of you have any ideas or desires for an agenda item, let Brian or me know, or Janie. Okay? That takes us to checkout before we go into closed session. And Carolyn, anything? Okay. Barb? Tim? Krista? Courtney? Dan? Everybody wants to go home and watch Georgia, Alabama, don't they? No, I don't think so. Anyway, I've got a couple of things. One is the chamber dinner. The annual chamber dinner in Oregon is going to be held on January 20th. It's a Saturday night. 27th? Okay. God, I got to check my calendar, make sure I got that on the right day. It's on the 27th, and Dr. Bussler is being given the President's Award by the chamber. So if any board member is interested in attending and you haven't let Janie know, because it's quite an honor to have our superintendent awarded and given the President's Award by our chamber. And the district's also getting award for the building projects that we've had, but the first one's really special. Congratulations, Brian.
Thank you. I'm technically picking that up for 7 board members, 700 employees, and over 4,000 students. So I just happen to have my name on it.
I do have it on the 27th, so that's good. Okay. I'd like to echo Brian's comments on the website and to thank the 3 who were involved intimately in that. And Chris, I know you spent a lot of time as a board member on it, so thanks. I went on and it just blew me away. It's really good. It reflects excellence, which is what we should be. It's really good. And I know it's going to keep evolving over the years. And then For the public, we have our convention, our annual Wisconsin Association of School Board Convention, which is held in conjunction with the business leaders and the district administrators in Milwaukee. It's a 3-day session. It's really valuable. We have been chosen as a district to speak, which is an honor, and so we are talking, Brian and I are talking Friday at 9:15. We managed to avoid the dreaded Friday morning 8 o'clock slot, which is never any good. But Brian and I are talking about the board's role in developing our strategic plan, the building referendum, and the teacher comp referendum and plan, and how that was all possible because of community engagement and supportive groups. So we continue to get a lot of other district inquiry about how we were able to pass a $55 million referendum and a teacher comp plan worth $3 million and 1.5 with a success rate of over 60%. And so there was great interest in having us speak to that. So Brian and I are going to talk about that. Leslie and I have been working on the PowerPoint on that. So bright and early Friday morning. So that's where board members will be next week. We've got it posted that board members will be there, but we will not be transacting business. So anything else before we move into executive session? The board will be moving over to our side conference room to go into closed session. We'll go into closed session there, and we will not return to open session. So we will recess at this point in time till the board can move overboard. I'll see you over there in about 5 minutes, and I'm thinking we might be a half hour maybe. Okay, just for planning purposes. Thanks, everyone. Happy New Year.